Prepare to die? Prepare to cry? No, my dear friend. You shouldn't prepare to cry. You shouldn't prepare to die. You shouldn't. You should prepare to go beyond death itself. Today, we're going to talk about Dark Souls 2. But before we do that, because this is going to most likely be a very long video, let us do one nice thing here. I still have lots of digital shit, and I got more digital shit. So, what better time but to have a random contest? As usual, you must be a subscriber, leave a comment, and check out the description. The description will have a link to a somewhat trailer, demo, something of, or lead to a store page that will have a video for you, or, you know, so you can see what titles are available. There's a lot of different things, including Shadowrun's, Shadowrun Returns expansion. I have some Steam keys of that, so I think I'm probably going to go do 2 winners, probably, because I got a lot of codes, so let's get rid of 2 of them. And, no, actually, no. Let's do 3. Let's do 3, yes. 3 people. I will choose 3 people, so leave a comment down below. Now, be aware, however, because of that, there will be 2 things that have multiple codes. If you want multiple... If multiple people want something, I have a singular code. When I do the drawing, the first drawer gets the first pick. So, we'll kind of go and walk from there. So we have that established. So anyway, while you're probably eagerly looking down below, let's unlock this sexy thing. So, I got the day 1 version, which this is not what it will look like. And the normal ones, Aaron got the normal one. It has that awful picture of him just standing with his back with gray, so it's so boring. This looks so much more better. And of course, what looks even better is the steel case. I'm not usually one for steel cases, but this looks very nice. And the back doesn't have all that, so this is what the back of the normal game will look like. So, but steel case is very nice. It is slightly etched out, so the helm, the title, and the sword, and its handle, and his hand, and a little of his arm gauntlet there, all standing out. It looks very nice. And of course, opening it wide, you get a full picture of him. So, that's very nice. Very nice indeed. Now, of course, disappointment sets in once we open up, because, while, of course, you would be greeted by the game, you will be greeted by a 2-page cover with no pages. And what's funnier is you don't even get this in the normal edition. Aaron's copy did not have this, and the back of the actual case cover had all that information. And if you got what I got, you also got a little code thing, which mine's already used, so it don't matter. There we go, try, maybe it'll work again. Where you get weapons. I have not seen confirmation if these weapons are in the game findable. That's what a lot of people were theorizing about them, but don't know. And, well, I do know Prepare to Die is in there, but you do get a music disc, a physical music disc this time, as opposed to the digital you got with the limited edition of Dark Souls 1. So anyway, lots of things to talk about in the first impressions of Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2. First thing, talking about some of the differences between the demo and beta and that. First-person sorcery, not a thing in the normal sense. There are binoculars you can use, and they're equipable like a weapon and shield. They're not an item, and you can move around while using them. So you can actually use the binoculars and shoot magic and attack, but only single-handed, not two-handed. So you can use the binoculars to do magic in a first-person sense, which does work and does become useful. However, it does not give you a targeting cue like with bows. Bows still the same, giving a first-person within a target. So that is out. Dual Stance mode has a requirement to enter with 2 dual weapons. To my understanding, it's 1.5 the stat requirements of the weapons. So you need to meet that much of the stat requirements, and you can enter the special duel mode where you enter a special attacking formation instead of just be having 2 weapons. So that's some of the differences there. At least the outright ones. Poise, a lot of people were hoping Poise just didn't exist in the online beta. I regret to inform anyone who's worried about that. That is how the game actually is. Poise does exist, however, but weapons do so much damage. So far, from what I've seen, Poise does not seem to be very worth it unless you're equipped to wear a lot of armor. I mean, a lot of the normal swords and shit do 10 poise damage a slash. And that's pretty common, and that's not even going into big weapons. And you can outright see the poise damage weapons do. So, and like, I have like 22 poise, I believe. And you do get natural poise as you level up. 2 of the stats can affect your poise. The lowest one, if you level it up, I think it was agility and one of the other ones, but I probably am misremembering that. I have not leveled up a lot. I'm like 40 something, so I've been trying to stay in a reasonable, interesting level range. So, you know, we're just talking about quick force pushes. So there's a way to get natural poise, so, but I got like 22 some poise, and it doesn't really seem to help me stand my ground, which of course, obviously, if a weapon can take it out in like 2-3 hits, or even 1 hit with like a greatsword or something, yeah, it doesn't seem too useful at the moment. I have heard people saying that it's really easy to get 70 poise, and I'm assuming that's more near the end of the game, because it seems like, well, actually, there's a lot of balancement things to talk about in this. Now, let's go ahead and just leave that off until we get to like some of the balancement issues. So, equipment all has, as you saw in the online beta, all the equipment has a stat adjustment to it. Certain equipment requires certain stats, and even if it doesn't, it does have a scaling. So many pieces of armor can scale your defense higher with better certain stats. So that both helps balance. The game really seemed... There's a lot to talk about. It really seems like they really wanted to focus a lot on not having those kind of ganks when you like, you know, back when you just start a new Dark Souls character and you see giant dads and Havel, the walk and shit running around the chapel at level 5 to 10. This game seems like it did everything in its power to avoid that as humanly possible. So, pretty much all the heavy equipment has a stat requirement. Without meeting that, it's diminished defense, so you can't really do that anymore. Many big two-handed weapons have much higher strength requirement, which encourages you to two-hand more, because one-handing is really hard now unless you devoutly level up a lot into that, which you can, but then, you know, you're not doing as much in other things. Another thing that seems to be in this, keep this in mind, this is all current patch, which is 3.03. Currently, what I understand, that soul memory. When you go look in your player stats and you see all your information, in the top right corner, there was a number gauge that's called soul memory. It keeps track of all the souls you've ever gotten, whether you lost them, spent them, leveled up with them. If you ever acquired them, they get added. Now, the soul memory, from what I understand, and I had to do a lot of research confirmation in that, does not affect New Game Plus and beyond. It only affects the first game you're in. And this again is another balancement to avoid that kind of ganking shit. So basically, unless you did what DSP did in Demon Souls, you shouldn't acquire, you shouldn't encounter someone who's level 75 during a monk fight with everything humanly possibly attached to him, and you just barely did anything, and you don't have anything, and then you cry and whine that he's level 200. That's not going to happen to you now that easily, unless you go to New Game Plus, or use a fire aesthetic, which will carry that area into New Game Plus. So there's a lot of interesting ideas with that. So the soul memory, I believe it has currently of this patch, Namco Bandai said, it has 50,000 range in it. So the idea is if somebody, PvP or cooperative, is not within that 50,000 range, you can't properly connect with them. Though some people have confirmed it's a possibility that it looks for that first and then goes beyond. So there's still a lot of theorizing, and they could patch or change things. But as far as I understand, after your first game, or if you stack a certain area, that area will become more open and will solely rely on your soul level of the normal 10% and plus 10 rule. So, you again don't have to worry about shitloads of fucking dumbass gankers and have all the walks armor and shit so easily. Though you may have to worry about pyromancy, since it still doesn't require stats to use, so if somebody can get a shitload of really strong pyromancing, you might have to worry about that. But, hey, at least it's not having to walk wearing pyromancing, right? I mean, and a lot of magic, too, also requires high stat mints. If you want to use Hex, a lot of high-end sorcery, or even a lot of faith, really high-end faith, there is a lot more commitment. Like, that's not like simple, like, 25 stat. Like, you need, like, 40 for one of the spear spells in sorcery. And a lot of Hex spells demand, like, 20 plus in both intelligence and faith, because most of Hex revolves around both stats instead of just a single one. So they also seem like it's making it harder to be this guy who can just wield everything without going way beyond the level restriction that most of the player base is going to stay in. So if you were that type like me who liked to try and use most forms of combat here and there in certain ways, using little arrows to pull a few things, some sorcery, a little pyromancing, a little poking and backstabbing, you might find it a little harder to have a big old variety. But it's not impossible. You still can get a decent variety. And there are even ways to make you have that variety in certain instance, as there are items that can lower the faith and intelligence requirement of certain spells. However, wow, those ain't incredibly common, but there are always to farm them using the bomb aesthetics, the bonfire aesthetics, or just going New Game Plus again and stuff. But they also will change the scaling, because you're lowering the stat requirement, which will actually affect the scaling damage. So while you're lowering it so you can use it, you're also affecting the damage output. So, give and take things. So there was a lot of balancement not issues. I mean, there was a lot of attention to really actually balance the beginning of the game in your first playthrough to not be really fucking awful when some jackass who's got everything in the game and stayed soul level 10 wants to murder people that's soul level 10. So that shouldn't be as big of an issue. Now, like I said, you will probably see some people flaring pyromancing probably eventually over time as people master doing the game and shit. Now, as a Force Suppressions, I haven't beaten the game. I've gone really far, and I'm surprised it's still going, because I was thinking I was at the 50% mark, and then I was starting to think I was at the 75% mark, and then it turned out I'm nowhere even close. I'm actually maybe closer to the halfway mark, maybe now. But, so much stuff to talk about. But, bonfires are littered everywhere. Seriously, it feels like almost half the time there's always a bonfire around the corner a lot of times in short bursts. So, personally to me, I feel like that's being very generous to people, to be honest. And the mobs, a lot of humanoid mobs are pretty easy, to be honest. When you get to a lot of the bigger ones and that, anything you can't backstab, it ain't like a humanoid, so far is about the only big old challenges. All the humans like you are very vulnerable of being basically stun locked, especially if you're using big weapons. So, but that doesn't mean they ain't dangerous. They're all dangerous humanoids, very explosive ones. But to me, the game does actually feel a bit easier, but to be honest, Dark Souls did the exact same thing. It felt easier because of my experience from the previous game. I can definitely tell you, I've seen lots of people get mortared and dead through co-op, and I've even died here, there. I mean, there's no way you just don't die. I mean, that's the whole fucking point of the game, is to die and learn. The game has changed illusionary walls a lot. While there are still some breakable walls and illusion walls, for the majority of part, it's taken the page from Kingsfield, where there are secret passages now. So now there are walls you might need to poke, and you also need to hit the X button. So there's more secrets abound, and I found quite a handful. There are also a lot more NPCs. Like, this is the most lively Souls game to date so far. Hell, probably, if you consider the Souls and the Kingsfield and that, this is probably the most lively NPC-filled game from FromSoft has made, possibly. There are just tons of NPCs, ton of NPC phantoms who will help you through your quest. There was quite a lot of merchants and really a few hidden people. Like, I've stumbled upon a freaking severed head that's still alive, and he's pretty well hidden. There's a lot of bizarre characters, hidden stuff, and there's lots of stuff to buy. And boss souls kind of go back to Demon Souls style, where you can buy spells again with them, plus make weapons. It's incredibly simple, unlike the other two games, though. You no longer need to level up a weapon and then, apply boss soul and souls and shit. Now you just simply present boss soul and some number of souls, which is, from what I've seen so far, 1,500. So it's pretty simple. Just bring soul, a few basic souls that should be quite simple at that point in time when you ever find that guy, and boom. And you can get a lot of magic and attack weapons. But I have noticed he does not take all the boss souls, which leads me to believe there might be other people out there that also provide a similar service. So that might be up in the air. So that takes a page from Demon Souls. They're all consumable items still with healing and recharging your magic. The herbs for recharging magic are incredibly rare, and most likely you're going to find them in the world as opposed to drops. But there are some stuff that drops them. But because enemies are limited to 15 spawns before they're permanently gone unless you aesthetic the bonfire into a New Game Plus or beyond, obviously, you can't get a shitload of them. The healing items, you can buy a lot of those from certain NPCs, and they're very common to find. And they don't really change a whole lot, to be honest. Early on, a few people I fought in PvP at first was getting a little annoying, but over time you kind of get used to countering it and that. But mainly your Eska is still your main healing item, and your Eska is both more dangerous to use and more efficient at the same time. Early on, you will maybe be sent into panic because you get to only start with one Eska. But you'll find more, and you'll find lots of bone dust, which is how you now, instead of having a bonfire keeper, it's how you power up your Eskas. Mine's +3 right now, so I've been doing very well on my Eskas and that, so you shouldn't have to freak out much about healing. You will have to possibly freak out about variety of weapons to use and that. Now, admittedly, it depends on how you make your character. If you go really into strength and dexterity, you're going to get a bigger variety than I can. Because, I usually tend a little more towards magic with a little touch of melee stuff. So, admittedly, I don't go incredibly heavy into that. But that did affect a lot of my variety of weapons a lot more. unless I added two-handing into the Factal, which, to be honest, shield playing has got toned down. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. Basically there was almost no point to not using a shield unless you were a Dodge Master and you needed the excess weight out of the Petrol. Or you just wanted to show that I can two-hand fucking everything! If you weren't trying to prove a point, then, it was almost like, why not have a shield with 100 physical defense on it at all times, And, that caused a lot of people to be totaling. And I'm not going to lie, I totaled a lot too. Until I got a little more better at PvP and that, and then found Ornstein Spear was the best thing ever. But, totaling will probably get you killed. I will be having a PvP video up on my Let's Play channel that actually demonstrates a few people who've died horribly from that. I think there was one where I also got smacked in the face. You no longer kick, but, and I talked about this in the online beta, but now you do a shield bash thing, which if you're in your shield mode, you get brushed to the side like you were parried, and left straight open to do a counter like you parried. And that leads into a whole nother discussion. Parrying's not the only way to really counter anymore. I mean, parrying and backstabbing. You can backstab, parry. You can shield break, which is where you force all their stamina to break. Well, in Dark Souls, it just left you open. You actually go into that figure where you can get riposte, and now actually just breaking all your stamina will put you in a riposte. Then there's the shield bash. The shield bash that'll put you in a riposte position too. So there's quite a variety for everyone to fucking stab, and anything can obviously force break your guard. Anything you block eating your stamina. So there's a lot of ways to get people into that position, and you could just take them out and shit. So you have to be a lot more careful. You can't just be like walking around. At distance, obviously you can, but when you get closer up, you need to be more thought-provoking about it, because the second somebody gets that off and smacks you, you're gonna lose about 50% of your health, most likely. Unless you get really lucky on something like he messed up the counter or something. Now, PvP-wise, or with the Covenants, the Blue Sentinels do not seem to be working properly. The invading the guilty, I don't know. As far as I can tell, sins don't seem to be functional. I had a second kill, though, I made to mess around and do something with Aaron and that. And I killed all the NPCs with that kill and gathered no sin. I've been in the Brotherhood of Blood and killed people and have gone no sin. And you can see your sin under your one of the two player pages, the one that shows your actual kill, though there's a spot it tells you sin. And it's just a dash. So, as far as I can tell, sins are broken. Which is probably why cracked blue orbs do not work in the Blue Sentinels, because apparently no one's generating sin. Now, the helping of the way to blue might also have an issue, but that could also be because of the soul memory, so that one's still kind of up in the air. Some people have, and I have seen a Blue Sentinel in someone's world before, so there's some functionality in there that might have some more to do with soul memory, so maybe in New Game Plus, the Blue Sentinels will be more of a sane thing. But they did not seem to be very functional in your first run-through for me. The Brotherhood of Blood and the Blue Sentinels have a dual system with its own Covenant members. And I've done both of those too. And I find it weird you can heal in those. But aside from that, there's a few different battlegrounds. They basically took the arena from the Prepare to Die DLC and merged it with those two having those kind of PvP arenas. So, be honest, they offer a lot of different variety. Now, the Brotherhood of Blood is pretty much duel your members and go gank people to death. So, not a whole lot new with them. The Sunblows, I have not found the Sunblows yet, but as far as I can tell, they work exactly the same. They just help enjoy cooperation, get better connections, and get sunlight medallions to rank up. So, As far as I know, that's how they function. Now, the Bell Keepers, the Force Covenant I've discovered aside from the Way of Blue, which is the Force Covenant you can enter because it's inside the town. And that just gives you a wing that gives you a little more HP boost and will allow the Blue Sentinels to help you, which I've never saw one in the entire time I was in it. But the the Bell Keepers was the first actual covenant I ran into, and they're basically like the Forest Covenant. They protect a territorial area, and when you come into that territory, you're open to being invaded. What's really different about the Bell Keepers is being a Bell Keeper does not protect you. You can still be invaded. Killing the boss in the Bell Tower will still leave you to invasion. So, to anyone who always avoided killing the Great Wolf in the forest, and you were sad to see that you can no longer do forest evasions or get invaded by forest, this fixes that issue though. So now it's just PvP. You can go back anytime you want, and if you're in the Bell Keepers, you can be. Don't go in the Bell Tower, but you can go anywhere else in the area, and you wear the wing and be summoned to go kill Bell invaders. They don't offer huge rewards. They just have Titanite chunks, and the max reward is the armor set, which I'm very fond of their helmet. The Rat Covenant, a very interesting covenant. They also guard a territory, but you can infest it with design traps. Admittedly, not in a huge variety so far. I hear there is a second location this covenant also protects, so I don't know about that area yet. I found the Saint's Grave one, and it has a few traps, but mostly minor stuff. But you can design it a little using the lock stones, and basically what happens when you're wearing your wing, anyone who goes into the Saint's Grave will be pulled into your world and must kill you or reach the fog gate at the end to escape. So, and all the unlike the Bell Keepers, all the mobs and everything are on the Covenant members' side. But they also suffer the limited respawns unless they use a bonfire instead. So, it's a pretty interesting covenant, but it's definitely very troll in the gang. But it does offer some variety of either just fight straight up, or you can kind of tease, run around, drive the guy crazy. It offers a little variety, so it's kind of interesting. And also, being a bonfire right there, which if you were smart, you really don't lose anything, to be honest. So, it's pretty nice. I actually been enjoying them too. And Brotherhood of Blood, for the most part, as far as I can tell, all their functionality works. So far, the Blue Sentinels are the only ones that seem to have a problem with their cracked orbs not functioning properly. Which, I'm sure if there's something else new or something I didn't know about that, somebody will probably leave a comment about that. So, there are new stats. I'm sure if anyone who's a big Dark Souls person probably already read a lot about it. You have your agility stat. You have, they took resistance out and merged it with adaptability, which increases your resistance and other forms of speed in that with agility. So, adaptability was in the online beta, but resistance was still in it, if I remember correctly. Now resistance has been merged into it, and there was one other new one that is now for HP, while Vitality just does equipped load. Vogel, I believe, was for HP now, so they did change a few things around from the online beta with the stats, and a lot of people are having huge fucking fights about the adaptability, about whether it gives you new invincibility flames or not, whether it's actually making you drink Eskas faster. It's almost like the equivalent of back in Pokemon Red and Blue, where people are like, you hold A down or time it just right and you get higher success rate of the Pokemon ball catching. And yes, people still argue about that one too. So, I guess you could say it's the Souls community's version of that whole scenario. So, a lot of people have always started tons of testing with that. I know, was it the German Spy or somebody did a comparison video of a few actions already, but not a whole lot. I think it was just generally running, drinking, and a roll, so it wasn't a very in-depth thing with like monsters or anything, so whew, lots of talking. There's still tons of gear in the game, and of course there's a lot. I'm seeing there's still a lot of equipment with effects. Wings will increase to 4 slots. You can equip 4 wings. So a lot of people were thinking they were going to remove a lot of the unique abilities that armor and that would have. Doesn't seem to be the case. Now, so far I haven't seen a shitload of it, but I have found a helmet that will increase equip load. It's a handpiece, but it's not gloves. It's one of those prisoner things where both your hands are on a plank of wood or that. And actually not sure what the term for those are. But one of those you can get attached to your hand, and that will increase your pyromancing. I've seen on the loading screen a piece of body piece that will increase your equipped load. And I know 2 headpieces that increase your item discovery. So it does not seem like that has vanished. So if you were one of those who were hoping that it was, it doesn't seem to be. But you can equip 4 wings, like I said. So there are a lot more options for different status effects, or buffs, or things, or stat increases, whatever kind of wing you're using. And interesting enough, there are plus wings. There are upgraded wings, and I do not know if you can find somebody that will upgrade the wing for you, but I have found some +1 versions of 3 wings, in fact. So, and I'm told there's even more in New Game Plus. So, but I'm not New Game Plus. I'm still on my first playthrough. I have so much footage of the game I have to get together. I don't have space on my computer to really keep doing more at the moment, which is a real shame. But, bosses, there are a lot of bosses. And the way they kind of designed the game so far seems to be very mixed on the difficulty. Because there's a number of areas that have a complete different way you could get to them based on how you approach the world. So, certain bosses come off as easier and harder, kinda, like people who went into the sewer way and actually realized you could go that way instead of thinking it was locked. I wonder who did that. Hey, get away, hands. Anyway, or the forest giants, and you could just completely end up different places and stuff. Depending on what you find, what you do, there's different paths you could do, and you can end up. I found people, when I was in the Brotherhood of Blood, I found people still in their level 40s in the Forest of Giants, which to me is where the developer, like the forest area the developer really wanted you to go, even though there is a told no road you could take if you found it. So, there's been some people bitching about bosses being easy. And I don't think it's necessarily that they're easy. I think it's that it really depends on how you approach the game, that there are certain ones that are hard or easier, or because you haven't came here so early, it became easier because you went down a different road or that. So, lore. The story is incredibly interesting, to be honest, if you're trying to think of it as, the deep way of Dark Souls and Demon Souls was. There's a lot of references to Dark Souls. And there's tons of speculation. If you watch my Let's Play, there's a few parts here and there where I kind of talk about my thoughts on it and how it's changing as I get deeper in the game. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of the game. But obviously, I don't want to ruin anything about that. I might actually do a video where I talk more about the lore, because I'm actually finding a lot of interesting pieces in it. Now, I try to cover as much stuff as I can think. The server, of course, a lot of people probably want to know how the server is compared to the peer-to-peer system Dark Souls did over Demon Souls server. You'll be happy to hear that it's pretty much instantaneous. Your signs appear, you can invade, it finds it, if somebody's actually there to be invadable or not and stuff. That's, like I said, all I can see is the Blue Sentinels have a few issues, and that might be related something to the soul memory in your first playthrough. But in the cracked orbs, for some reason, don't seem to be working because nobody seems to be getting sinned. Or I don't know anyone so far who has sinned or has sinned. Maybe anyone who might found out what commits a sin. I would think butchering the entire town on an alt character would develop sin for that character, but apparently not. It's either broken or the conditions to earn sin are different. Which, butchering the town and invading people and killing players don't get sins. I don't know what will. I know a lot of people, it's really hard to discuss about the difficulty, to be honest. I do feel it feels easier so far, but there were some interesting moments, and there's a lot more traps and ambushes, which is definitely something I feel has been increased a lot more from the previous two games. There are a lot of moments where the game is trying to set up an ambush in that, and pardon me. Pardon me. There's a lot of moments where there's a lot of ambushes and things, and you're going to have to be on your wits more. To be honest, I think there's one really good one I really liked. Aside from that, and I have been caught off some. Some I realized too late, and some I just called out. I am an overcautious one, so I can't say I fell. My opinion is I haven't fell for a whole lot, but I've had my moments. Especially when you get to the forest. You know what I'm talking about. But, at least, anyone who's been there yet knows what I'm talking about. But, put it in simple terms, I'm really enjoying the game. I'm really enjoying it. It has changed. It's not something that is solely the same. Combat has changed. War has changed. And while it plays quite similarly, there are elements that are different that you need to be aware of and be careful of. So, I definitely have to say, I recommend it. Whether you're going to think it's a huge improvement or a slight downer is going to vary on certain elements. But I am enjoying it. I'm loving it, and I can't wait to get to the end and get to New Game Plus, which is the last thing I want to leave on note for this First Impressions. New Game Plus changes. Now, I have not gone New Game Plus, but I've heard things. Different bosses have new abilities. Some actually will appear in different areas. And there are new phantoms that appear. There were special cameo invasions I've heard from Dark Souls 1 people. Or not necessarily the people, but people wearing like the armor sets of those countrymen. So, and there's plus some special boss souls that only appear in New Game Plus, and I know about that because Brandon's weapon of choice, which I'm not going to spoil what that is, but if you're curious, you can go look up Ouroboros Ninja's Twitch account. So, anywho, I recommend title. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it, and I look forward to getting in the New Game Plus to try out the stuff in there, and since, of course, to get all the trophies I'm going to have to do that, that means I guess this is going to be a longer playthrough than I thought, So anyway, that's my first questions. If you got any questions, which is quite understandable because there's a lot of material and, you know, I'm going to be discovering even more stuff. So feel free to leave a comment down below and let me know any questions you have or your opinions on anything, because I know Game FAQs is having a giant freaking war. Anyway, I'll see you all later. Peace out. Praise the sun. Bow and do everything humanly possible that you can emote. What? That's an emote in the game. So anyway, I'll see you all later, and I hope to see you on Dark Souls 2.